While completing my field experience for Literacy Methods class, I observed Mrs. Deal's fourth grade classroom at Delaware Elementary School. There were roughly 25 students in this energized, modern classroom. The students were eager to learn, and it was obvious that the teacher was passionate about her job. When I entered Mrs. Deal's room, many things stood out to me. The walls were covered in posters. Some included motivational quotes, while others were story charts or vocabulary words. I also saw a hefty supply of books for students to read during free time. A classroom set of laptops were also located in the front of the room for access to technological learning. While on my observation visits, I paid careful attention to how Mrs. Deal taught her fourth grade students. I noticed a variety of learning theories being used in the classroom. This included the sociolinguistics theory. Sociolinguistics focuses on language and views reading as a social activity. Shared reading is an activity that follows the theory of sociolinguistics, and it was heavily used in the classroom. Mrs. Deal read to her students often and asked them questions as she went along. This constant need for feedback created an active listening from the students. They paid careful attention and loved to be the first one to raise their hand to answer a question. Information processing was also a major learning strategy used in Mrs. Deal's classroom. Information processing explains that readers' interpretations are individualized. Each student is expected to make their own meaning of a piece of text. We all develop our own opinions of literature, and it is important that we express that. While observing, I noticed information processing being used as a learning strategy. In this fourth grade classroom, students read independently on a daily basis. They had an individual bin that held their books and reading logs. Students were encouraged to record their own thoughts as they read to themselves in a relaxing area of the room. I noticed various examples of oral language in the classroom as well. One strategy of developing oral language in students is encouraging group discussion. In this particular classroom, students were arranged in circular tables, a perfect atmosphere for a good group discussion. During one lesson I observed, the teacher was asking what the students believed the theme of a specific story was. She instructed her fourth graders to talk to the others at their table and come up with an answer. This strategy of encouraging students to have an educational conversation goes right along with improving oral language. Another example I noticed of oral language being used in the classroom was an activity called Think Alouds. This strategy is executed when an educator talks through a thinking process. It is the teacher's job to speak an inner thought process out loud to model to the students what that experience might be like. This oral language strategy was used while working on a reading comprehension assignment. Mrs. Deal read the questions out loud to the class and talked through her thought process of how to answer the multiple choice questions. She eliminated possible answers by directing her thoughts back to the reading and making sense what was being asked. This orally modeled for the students which path their thought process should follow. From my point of view, reading instruction simply means the art of teaching a student to read and encouraging positive reading experiences. Reading proved to be very important in Miss Deal's fourth grade classroom. Multiple strategies were used to promote reading instruction, including one-on-one evaluations and exposure to a variety of genres. Mrs. Deal was fantastic with finding one-on-one time with her students. During several of my visits, the students were reading independently. As I said before, they were encouraged to record their thoughts as they read. As they would do this, Mrs. Deal would migrate around the room and ask students questions about their thought process. Having the students share their thoughts out loud promotes excellent reading instruction. Mrs. Deal was evaluating students' comprehension and encouraging them to dig a little deeper into their thoughts. She would ask, "Why does this section confuse you? Why did the narrator feel this way?" This encourages students to digest the words they are reading silently on the page. During my visits, I noticed exposure to genre. Each student had 2 independent reading books, one fiction and one nonfiction. They also spent a day studying poetry. I believe exposure to multiple genres is great reading instruction. Not all books can be read the same. Students must learn that a whole world of reading exists and different genres call for different approaches. The writing process includes multiple stages taken to compose a form of writing. Those stages include pre-writing, drafting, revising, editing, and publishing. Unfortunately, I did not get to witness any writing time during my classroom observations. However, I did get to witness hints of these strategies hanging up in the classroom. I spotted this poster during one of my visits at Delaware Elementary School. It seems to be a rubric that states several headings, including ideas, organization, voice, word choice, and sentence fluency. These are all concepts that go along with the writing process. And if that information was hung up year-round for the students to see, it is clearly an important tool used in the classroom. I believe each element in this rubric goes along with a step in the writing process. Ideas, for example, could be covered under the pre-writing and drafting steps. The rubric on the wall calls for a lot of detail and creativity. Both are extremely important in the beginning stages of writing. Another element that stood out to me on this rubric was the need for style. Voice, word choice, and sentence fluency all strike me as the icing on the cake of good writing. In this classroom, creating a piece of writing that was entertaining and purposeful is an important aspect of the writing process. Throughout my experience at Delaware Elementary School, I learned so much in such a short amount of time. It was a joy to see these strategies and methods I have learned at USI being used in an actual classroom. Learning theories, oral language, reading instruction, and the writing process were all present during my 2 hours of observation at Delaware. I am extremely thankful for this opportunity and plan to take part of this experience with me in the future. Working core standards into the classroom can be fun and interactive for the students. My time at Delaware Elementary School was short, but it will leave a lasting impression.